91.3 FM, WCW. If you're not catching us live on Radio Horror or on the podcast Radio Free America, hopefully you're checking us out on the Radio Horror YouTube channel. Tonight on the show, we have calling into us, all the way from Arizona, we have AZ Powergirl, Cara Nicole, cosplayer, model, editor, writer, all sorts of great titles that she holds. Thank you for calling on the show with us, Cara.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you taking some time to come on the show. You know you got a lot of busy schedules and conventions. You got a bunch of conventions this summer coming up, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I've got a few.
Are you going to be at the San Diego Comic Con?
I will. I will be at San Diego. I don't exactly know where I'm going to be yet, but yes, I will be there.
What's going on? When you sent me over your website, 183degreestudio.com, where you can check out the rest of Cara's amazing work. You're a musician too?
Not really. I've done a little bit of singing. I've got a few pieces out, a couple of music videos, nothing big.
Is it something that you want to pursue in the future when you kind of get tired of modeling, or?
Yeah, if it comes around, I do it mostly because I enjoy it.
We will have to try and play Living Dead maybe on the radio show sometime.
Yeah, definitely. The other one I think is better.
Do you see me?
Yes, that one we shot all across the country. We shot parts of that video in New York and Arizona and Texas, I think. I mean, it's just been all over the place that we shot that.
I like the fact that it's called Do You See Me, and the picture for the thumbnail is you topless, pressed up against the wall.
That's kind of the point. I actually used that as my political campaign kind of quote. Strong enough to believe was actually what we used from that song.
What made you want to pursue this career as a cosplay model? I mean, I'm assuming this is like a full-time thing for you, right?
It is a full-time thing now. It just kind of fell into my lap. So back in 2010, I started cosplaying with a local charity group. And we did Phoenix Comic Con and started recruiting. And it just developed. It was like, hey, you going to be in San Diego? I'm like, I don't know. So I started looking up online and finding jobs. I ended up working for Marvel Comics.
Very cool.
That year at San Diego. And I had a job offer from Archie Comics as well. You know, it just kind of developed. And then I started getting invited to events. Not necessarily with my group, but like on my own as a cosplay guest. And it just kind of snowballed. I started getting hired for modeling jobs. I was hired by Dan Wickline, who is a writer with Zenoscope and Image, as well as has his own novels coming out. I was hired to do some book covers for novels for local writers, and it just developed.
What was it about Powergirl that was like the thing that became your norm de plume? I guess that's the word that I'd be looking for.
So that one, I get asked that a lot, and I think it's funny because I think it might be a little obvious.
Because you're tall, strong, blonde, and...
Because I look like that.
You look like that.
I just look like that. Like, yeah, they needed some cosplayers for this charity group, and I was like, it was a DC charity. I'm like, I want to be Powergirl, and I just kind of took it and just ran with it.
Did you see?
So, and then I got kind of put into that because back then, you know, you didn't use your real name online because, you know,
creepy stalkers.
That would be creepy stalkers, and it just kind of snowballed, and so I just kind of got stuck with AZ Powergirl forever, and now people will do, you know, Cara Nicole or AZ Powergirl, like whatever, and then, you know, my name, I had to have that for some movies that I had done and some film work as well, so yeah, that's kind of it just kind of all fell together.
Did you see the April Fool's joke this past year about Supergirl? The TV series?
No, I didn't. What about it?
The April Fool's joke was, and yes, people again forget that it was April Fool's Day. The CW had announced as a joke, and I don't even know if it was them or not, that Powergirl would be appearing on Supergirl next year.
That's why people keep saying that.
Yes. And there has been
Okay.
not a single word yet about what Supergirl's. Yes, Supergirl's of course coming back next year. It's a very popular show, but they just ended the season last week. It kind of had a late restart because of the Black Lightning show. So Supergirl
Right.
kind of ended a little later than the other shows. So they haven't even talked yet about what's going to happen in season 4, or if they have, I haven't seen it online. But yes, as soon as I heard Power Girl was on there, I was thinking, you know, who should play Power Girl?
I get that a lot. I really do. So, yeah, it's so funny when it comes to Power Girl. I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, she's a clone of Supergirl." No, she's not.
The
Whoa.
reason why they take that is because the animated series did that.
I know, and that's Galatea. It's not
Yes,
Power Girl. So,
they gave her
yeah,
basically a taller look and bustier looking figure. Because I'm like,
she wasn't even bustier in the animated series.
no, they
It's
just
just
put
like
a
little
cut in her.
tiny
They
like
put just put
chest
a hole in her
window,
costume,
right?
and it's like the thing about the Power Girl is everyone has always questioned. It's just like, so she's Supergirl but older, but after what she had like kids or something, because it doesn't make any sense why one's drawn completely different than the other if they're the same person. And I'm just like, it's
Well,
Kryptonian
so
physiology.
you have to remember though, Supergirl is younger. Power Girl is grown. So Power Girl's ship took longer for her to get down here, and she was grown. So it's kind of she just finished growing up.
I love the way they covered it in the Justice Society of America Confidential. They finally brought up what the hell's up with the hole in your costume.
Oh, they've been talking about that for years.
Yeah, but they finally made it like a canon thing in the context
Oh,
of the
they did. So
costume.
what is the current canon? What are they saying now? See if it's any different than what
Keep in mind
I.
for anybody listening that this was before the events of the New 52 and Rebirth, so I don't even know what's considered canon with Power Girl anymore. But before the Infinite Crisis, there was a JSA confidential series drawn by Amanda Connor, who draws Power Girl
Yep.
perfectly. And I have every issue that she's drawn signed by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, and they love
Oh
talking
wow.
about her. And she said that the point was it's supposed to be the hole in her life that never gets filled.
Oh, that's what they're going with.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was originally supposed to
See,
be
and
like,
I've never seen her as being that deep. She's always been, and one of the things that I loved about her was just that she was just kind of like, whatever,
well, they kept screwing her
you
origin
know.
up because of the fact they did away with the Earth 2 characters, and she was kind of left behind, so she had this whole new origin created, but in the
But
JSA
remember
Confidential,
When Earth Two, imploded, when Earth Two disappeared, she hid in Earth One, and they froze her in Atlantis.
yeah, that was her origin, that she was from Atlantis for a little while. And then Jeff Johns brought back the whole Earth 2 thing and was just like, yes, the Superman and Lois Lane from Earth 2 with Superboy Prime, who've been living in the pocket dimension limbo and blah 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 blah. That that's her. That's where she comes from. It's she
Right.
comes from Earth 2. We're gonna establish that Earth 2 was destroyed during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that she's a survivor of it. That's it. We don't need to overcomplicate it beyond just explaining that. But I guess back in the 80s, people just didn't understand comic books like the way Jeff Johns were able to spell it out for everyone now. So that's it.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can accept that as an easy, quick explanation. That's easier if people want to ask me, what is it, the hole she feels in her life? Like, okay.
Maybe the costume is really constrained. She needs to breathe a little bit more. Let's think about that
Well,
too.
and if you look at my costume, I have like I've changed versions a lot, and it's funny because people be like, "Oh, can you just throw in your Power Girl cosplay?" It's white. White does not stay white.
No.
I've been doing this since 2010. Don't think I got the same costume. So you have to replace it a lot. And one of the things that I've done is try to create more of a Superman symbol
Yes.
style hole. I mean, it's more flattering, honestly. If
The
you look at my costume versus some of the others out there, it is a more flattering style.
there's one particular costume that I actually showed my girlfriend and said, "We need to do something like this for you." Your Black Canary got her to create her own kind of Black Canary costume when we went to Rhode Island Comic Con together this past year. She came with me to Rhode Island Comic Con and she wanted to cosplay, and I got her to be Black Canary. your costume was like the thing that I showed her to say, hey, this is what something you should do.
Oh, my Black Canary costume was just something fun that I need to find again. So if you notice, my Black Canary costume is a little different, and it has straps. So there are conventions now that are starting to say, you know what, you got to have straps. And when you're heavy chested, so we're going to get a little TMI here for all you people that ask cosplay questions and don't know how clothing works. Because why should you know how clothing works? It's not a normal thing.
Correct.
So when I wear corsetry, unless it is like double spiral steel boned, even with that, it becomes very heavy, and my boning, which is the lines that go up and down that hold your costume up, they have been known to crush. Like, I'm not even kidding. So when you open up the corset and you pull them out, they're bent. They turn into these like number fours, because I'm so top heavy that it crushes my boning. Rather than, ruining it after one show, or, getting told that I have to wear my jacket the whole time because it doesn't have straps, and conventions, like I said, are requiring straps, even for corsets and that sort of thing. I went with a piece that had built-in straps. So now I can take off my jacket safely without, becoming a registered sex offender.
That sounds a bit ridiculous and not right.
But if other people might not have that problem, it's more of a my problem issue. I mean, and there's other people that would have my problem, but it's something that you wouldn't know if you were not top heavy.
That's completely a great topic to bring up. Do you There are a lot of cosplayers who are extremely well endowed, let's professionally say, and they I've talked to some of them, and they do suffer from they suffer for their art, basically.
Oh yeah.
Do you do you get a lot of like medical expenses that come out of just trying to do this sometimes because of what you wear, and do you have to go see a chiropractor?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you brought that up. That's absolutely true. I have been in that situation. One time usually I do Smallville Comic Con in conjunction with Denver or Albuquerque or something along those lines, so that I can take one trip, because I do a lot of driving, because I have a lot of stuff. Like, if you've ever seen my display, it is insane.
It is
A lot
crazy.
of like newer cosplayers, like, oh look, I have my banner and I have my little print book. It's like, I've got a 16-foot rack. I've got frames. I've got art. I work with Alfred Trujillo, so between his art and my cosplay, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prints. I have my own line of cosplay books. I got a lot of stuff, so it's easier to drive and do it that way than it is to fly.
Yeah, because you could lose all that
So,
stuff with flying.
well, and you just can't get it all on the plane.
Yeah, but I'd be more worried
So,
about like the flight losing half your crap as you're trying to get to like San Diego Comic Con.
oh, big time. Now, yeah, exactly. So, I I do that, and I was driving, and my back was so bad.
Do
I
you?
was almost in tears. I,
Oh no.
this was in Smallville, and I ended up staying an extra day after the show so that I could go see a chiropractor, and she wouldn't touch me because she didn't have an X-ray machine. So she referred me somewhere else, and I went, and I was so bad, he had to crack me backwards.
Ah.
So you know anything about chiropractic? They lay you down and kind of push on your back and crack, crack, crack. No, he had to like put me on my front and literally like jam something up into my back while forcing me down backwards. It was, I screamed. I
Oh.
literally screamed because of this pressure getting off of me. And then that kind of tied me over for a week. I did the next show. I ended up seeing another chiropractor in Colorado, and in order to get my back to where I could walk properly and not be in so much pain, he ended up actually damaging my shoulder.
Oh.
I had to have my shoulder taped up because it was the only way that he could, get my back functioning again. One time I was in El Paso, and I was to the point where I couldn't walk. So I was calling massage therapists. It was 10 o'clock at night, and it was funny. And, people always talk about, I'm going to go on a tangent here that kind of goes along with this. People talk about equal rights, and I'm usually one to be like, yeah, we really do have equal rights, but in this case, we don't. I started calling around massage therapists, and it was, oh, we don't do women.
What?
Like, I don't want a happy ending.
Do you think they don't do women because they're worried about just
No, I think that they don't woo do women because they're hookers.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, so okay.
But I did find someone who, at 10 o'clock at night, it was very funny because this place was literally in the same shopping center as a strip club. But I'm like, I don't care. I have to drive. I can't walk. I was in so much pain. But yeah, I do end up with some of these medical expenses. One year on my birthday, I broke my foot and I
Oh,
didn't know it was broken. I did the entire weekend at Phoenix Comic Con in heels. Then went to work on Monday. This was back when I had time for a job, and then went to the urgent care afterwards and ended up on crutches. I'm like, oh, I've been walking around on a broken foot for 4 days.
so you have as many
Brutal.
injuries as Batman without actually having to be Batman or Batwoman or
I had
Batgirl.
yes, Bane broke my back.
That's exactly
You
what I
know,
was thinking of.
right?
And I can't
You know,
even
I've had
imagine, and I
ear
can't.
infections. I've had, and medical insurance. People, it's so funny. People talk about cosplay like, oh, how do you get into this? How do you do this?
Oh yeah, there's no medical
And
insurance for it. You gotta pay
there's
for
no
it.
job. There's no like, I'm gonna go to the cosplay company and get a job.
Yeah.
So there's things that you don't get, like medical insurance, um, that sort of thing. And it's kind of funny because I do get people that come up to me and they're like, oh, how do you do this? And I do mentor a lot of people, and I'd like to start doing that on a more professional basis. So please, if any cosplayers out there want to know the dirty down lowdown of what is up and how to be successful and a working cosplayer and living this life, I will, help you out and give you all that information. I've worked with other cosplayers that are beginning, and I find that people that follow my technique have a stronger fan base. They have more longevity. They have, a much better cosplay career altogether than people who just kind of jump out there with, I want to be a cosplayer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear that more often than you can than I probably hear that less more often than you do probably because you go to more cons than I do. I always like kind of I try not to when somebody like asks me about it or they say hey I heard your interview or oh my god I want to make this my life. I really try to keep my mouth shut about like I don't think this is the greatest idea or maybe you should go talk to somebody who's been doing this for 10 years. I usually just refer to them to be like, well, do your own research and look into this really thoroughly before you make this a life changing decision that you're going to drop your 9 to 5 job to become a supermodel in cosplay. Just do that and then get back to me. Because I don't have
Exactly.
the advice. I'm not a professional cosplayer. I just say you got to do your research before you take another step further in what you're thinking you're going to do. I'm not saying you're not attractive because you are, but go do your research and come back to me. And
Well, and the hard part of that is, where do you do your research? I have actually started a panel. I called it the business of cosplay for a long time, and people weren't going because they didn't understand the wording.
or how about listening to
It,
interviews like
it,
this?
but it turned into how to be a professional cosplayer. That people can understand a little bit more. And this goes for anybody. People think, oh, you have to be young and have big boobs. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
I know cosplayers that are successful, that are men. There's different ways of doing it. There's so much that people just don't understand. And then you start getting into the legalities. Nobody wants to tell you because, like I said, when I've asked other cosplayers because I want to know what they're going to say, and you know what they say? Oh, just be cute and nice and patient. And you know what ends up happening? You get a lot of young girls that are 18, 19 years old that start getting naked, that start feeling desperate,
Oh yeah,
and they start, and the thing is, don't get me wrong. If that's what you want to do because you're comfortable in it and you own that, then you go, girl, you do it. But don't ever feel like you have to do something that you're not comfortable with in order to be successful.
I have a movie that I'm currently. I swear, I hope this is finally gonna happen. Middle of July, we're filming a film called The Model. It's a black and white silent film thriller about a model that goes for a casting call and is forced to have sex with the interviewer. And at the end of the short film, we find out that she's actually kidnapped the interviewer and been torturing her.
That's crazy and it sounds pretty legit.
and it's
Is
a
this a documentary?
no, it's not a documentary. It's supposed to be just a short silent film, black and white thriller. A
Yeah,
with
but
a
you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what
Oh,
I'm
okay,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. And it's we don't give a face to the interviewer. The model is seen throughout the entire thing because she's the star. But the interviewer isn't a woman, but she has no face. Like we never show her face. We show her legs, we show her heels, we show her, we show her cleavage, we show the back of her head, and then but we never see her face. And it's supposed to give a faceless view to these like Harvey Weinstein like people. And yes, at the end of the short, there is going to be like a listen. This happens a lot. Don't do this. Don't do that. This is in honor of all women in the hashtag Me Too movement. So it is a little political.
And if you need any advice or direction from a female who's been in these positions, please don't hesitate to hit me up. There's a lot of things people don't understand.
I can send
There's
you. I,
so much that goes along with that. I was in a movie in 2011, and the director, producer, lead actor, blah blah blah, he was that way, and I wouldn't put up with it.
I
I
will
was like,
send.
oh hell no, and they threaten you.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, I went through my thing, and I'm a big old loudmouth. I said something, and I kind of got ignored. And people say, well, why don't you press charges? Because there is no crime in being a dick. There's no crime in doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's always a line, and it was interesting. So fast forward a few years, one of the girls that he did abuse and that let him lie to her and sucker her, she took her own life.
Uh.
And after she did this, he exploited her suicide to promote his garbage.
Uh.
And then about a few months after that, about 30 women came out and said, he did this to me, he did that to me. Unfortunately, he never did anything illegal. They didn't come out because they were afraid. This was the most interesting part of the situation, is these girls were saying that they weren't coming out because they were afraid. Now, the local newspaper wanted to do an article on this, but they have a lot of legal repercussions and a lot of things they need to be careful of. What happened, and I knew this was going to happen, that they would not allow him to put this story out as he wanted to, because he had been burned by this guy too. This guy was abusing men and women, and he had been burned, not sexually abused, but he had been taken advantage of by this person. And so he wanted these stories out, but I knew that legally he was going to run into issues with the newspaper company, who's going to be like, well, we can't just say this. This is slander at this point with no proof of anything. And so when he modified it and it came out weak, all these girls were, oh, I'm so disappointed that you wouldn't run the article anyway just because you're afraid. And I'm like, oh, hell no, girl. You didn't say anything for 10 years because you were afraid. And now you're going to criticize someone else? Not even a person, but you're going to criticize, a newspaper for protecting their bottom line because they're afraid. You were afraid too.
Do you ever watch the TV series iZombie?
Yes, I love iZombie.
Okay. Do you know
I'm
the
behind, but I've been watching it now, like
okay?
this last season, catching up.
Do you know the character that was on iZombie that was on Prison Break who played Tito, the kind of sicko rapist?
No, which one was he on iZombie?
I think he's the father of the super blonde male zombie guy.
Okay, so he's the prophet. In the prophet in the new
Yeah. He's like
season.
really skinny, kind of sketchy
Yeah.
looking. That
Mm-hmm.
actor. I don't know if he was on the show this past season, but a friend of mine.
Yeah,
Um,
he's on the show this season, and you know how there's the beginning part that's like comic booky and whatnot?
yeah.
He's added in there, and he's called the prophet.
Okay.
You need to catch up.
Okay. Well, he got outed by several women recently. One of which is a friend of mine. She kind of had a story that kind of reminisces what you just said. She accuses him of sexual assault back when she had like no career and she was nobody, and she didn't know who would believe her versus the guy that's currently on Prison Break.
Mm-hmm.
And when she put her story on the net or whatever, a bunch of other women came out as well saying that this is what they needed to finally, tell their story as well. His allegation, his is like, oh, it's not true. I want to meet with my accusers and talk to them about it and stuff.
It's a very hard, sticky situation. In my case, I was threatened with he was going to tell everyone I was difficult to work with. I was a diva. He was going to ruin me. And you know what I told him? Ruin me. Do it. Have fun. And he did. He put it all out there that I was difficult to work with. I'm a diva, blah, blah, blah. That is now in my bio. I am a diva. If standing up for myself and not allowing myself to be taken advantage of, abused, if not being your your face and your name and getting you publicity, just because you think you deserve it makes me a diva, then yeah, I'm a diva. And I walked away. I'm like, you're not going to do this to me. I don't need this crap. And not everyone has that ability. So I understand both sides of it. And I think that we are changing in our community, in our society, so to where people say, you know what, this is not appropriate. Unfortunately, there's no legal side to this. It's not illegal to do that, but maybe it needs to be. Maybe in the Weinstein situation, it needs to be, oh, you told them that if they had sex with you, that they would get this movie. Well, guess what? That's being a John. That's prostitution. And this whole thing that they do where they have contracts to say, oh, you can't say anything and I'll give you this money. No, you should not be allowed to legally cover up a crime through contract.
Agreed.
There are a lot of things that we need to do legally to start protecting people. And I do, I try to do legislative work. And like I said, I ran for House of Representatives in 2016. So, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Hey, no, it's fine. You know what? I always say every show we do, there is unfortunately there's horror in everything, and there's horror in cosplay. There's a lot of great in it, and there's a lot of good that can be done, but unfortunately there are stories that people don't want to talk about, and they need to be brought out into the open because we can't live in fear of what you don't want to know about. You know what I mean? You can't live in shelter.
On the other side of that, it gets crazy because you try to talk to people like, hey, this is the downside. This is the reality. This is where you need to protect yourself. Oh, my daughter knows stranger danger. I know buzzwords too, but that doesn't protect you.
Yeah, like
when that old guy comes up that has money and is gonna use and help you with your cosplay career because age is only a number and he loves you for who you are, girl.
Yeah.
No. People will do things if they think that there's going to be fame, and they don't understand that the majority of these people end up not famous, not rich. So that's where I want to come in and be like, look, I will teach you how to be a working, successful cosplayer on your terms. And I've talked to lots of girls that are like, yeah, you know what, I did this, I did what you said, and this happened, and it's great. Talked to male cosplayers that I've, mentored and given advice to as well. And they're learning and they're empowering themselves.
I will admit that, I had a certain kind of belief about cosplayers once upon a time too, before I started being like, why don't, someone suggested, why don't you interview one? I was like, oh, I don't cover anything like that. And they're like, yeah, but you might find there's more to a story there than just like, she looks hot because she's got nice boobies, or, he's super tall and handsome, and that's why he looks great as Batman. Just ask one and then see where it goes from there. And I had a couple that came on that were just don't have any bad stories whatsoever. Everything's fine and that's great and all. But then I had a couple that came on, and one or two, and they really kind of got into the underlining of it and like why they don't do it anymore or what they have to watch out for. And it kind of changed my whole view. And I really it really kind of disturbs me sometimes when I see like just either the comments or the things that people say, and I'm just like, God, are these people just uneducated, or they just have never been to a convention before in their entire life, and they're back the way I used to be, where I only had like one thought that, this life must be so perfect for them type of, thing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs, and I understand why some cosplayers retire or stop doing it, some move on to something else, some don't like it anymore.
Some start families, some start big careers.
And that's okay. there can be a really good balance between the good and the bad. Like, for me, the majority of my fans know me. And I think that being behind the computer screen, a lot of people feel empowered to say things they would never say to your face. Well, because I travel so much and because I meet so many people, now you're not behind a screen. Now I know you. Now I've held your child. I've hugged your wife. I know you. I know where you live. I know your family. I know your beliefs. And it humanizes, the cosplayer. So
Yeah.
now they're no longer just, tits on a screen. They're a person. They're a person that you share your feelings with. And there's a friendship and a camaraderie there. And that, I think, has been really good for my success, because when I say success, I'm not talking about like money and that sort of thing. I'm talking about the community, the people that learned about cosplay from me, that learned that they can cosplay too, even if they're older or handicapped or whatever. And I think that that's like the best thing that we can do is normalize cosplay and legitimize cosplay. It's just like art. You'd be like, oh, art's porn. Well, there's some art that is porn. There's some cosplay that's porn. But there's also a lot that's not.
What's that? What was that calendar that came out? They do. I don't know if they do it every year. I had one of them. I had the horror one, which was really cool. But it was like artistic nudes with horror scenes, and then they did like a cosplay one as well, or superheroes.
I did not know that. That sounds absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and none of the girls were in any type of pornographic kind of setting, but people still call it nudity porn, and I always got to slap them upside the head, being like,
Yeah,
no, there is a difference between the two.
Big time.
Hentai is porn. This is not porn. Playboy was not porn. It was artistic nudes.
Okay, so you want to hear something funny about Playboy?
What?
I just got back from Wyoming.
Okay.
And a friend of mine there was showing me some strange things that he had collected. And one of the things is a Playboy in Braille. I'm not even kidding. There's always that joke, and it looks like it's made out of paper bag material.
Oh my god, I have heard of
the Playboy logo on the cover. There's no pictures. It's all in Braille.
So you really are reading it for the articles.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I even opened it up to the centerfold because I had to see what a Braille Playboy centerfold is, and it's just more Braille.
Get into something a little sillier before we let you go, because we got really dark there in the middle of this, which is fine, because that's kind of, like, again, the reason I wanted to have on the show. Julie Casavat, I can't pronounce the last name. It's at Julie Casavates on Twitter, asks, what do you do for a workout to stay in shape?
I am a vegan. I also carry heavy things like all my grid wall and boxes and whatnot into the con. I need to get more in shape, and that's coming soon, just because you need to be in shape in order to keep up with the demands.
Okay. And then the other question that I got was from Richard. Again, the last name. Okay, Richard Grimey. It's at Richard Grimey on Twitter. Asked, at what point do you stop?
I don't know. Until I hit a wall. I don't mean that.
Well,
but I mean, I don't know.
Going back to your medical issue, do you think one day you might possibly need back surgery or some type of major surgery?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, unless I was in like a terrible car accident or something, now I'm fine.
So it's not that bad.
I think that I'll be okay.
Okay, that's good. Because I
do remember what we were talking about, and it was the legalities, and there's a whole other thing. So, like I said, if you want to have me back at another time,
yeah,
where we can really just talk about the legalities and like kind of go through the whole how to be a pro cosplayer and all that kind of stuff, it might be something that's kind of fun.
Yeah, why don't we come back to that a different conversation, because that could be a really long one too. Two questions I have that I always love asking people are, what is the weirdest experience you've ever had at a convention?
I was locked in an elevator at Circus at about 4 a.m. and I don't know how I got out.
Was anyone in the elevator with you?
Yes, I went to Vegas for a convention, and I was with a buddy of mine, and I had to go look around on my Instagram to find out what happened. And yes, we did get stuck in there. Passed out at one point. I was tired. I had just driven from Phoenix to Vegas, and we had been drinking. I'll admit it. Because you know what? I'm over 21. I can drink.
a friend of mine got locked in an elevator for an hour with Misha Collins,
Oh, cool.
and she doesn't watch Supernatural or like the show.
That's funny.
And she didn't say that to him, but she's like, but she did tell him, I don't watch your show, but my friend is a huge fan of yours.
Oh, okay. I was at Baltimore Con, and a friend of mine introduced me to this girl, and she brought these taxidermied squirrels that were dressed like Sam and Dean and Castiel and Crowley. And this is what she does. She's actually a vegetarian
Oh,
who collects
wow.
roadkill, and she taxidermies these squirrels. And this has gotten to the point now, because what she'll do is she'll take them to the actors to take pictures with them and to have them sign these
Yeah, I've seen
taxidermied
those.
squirrels. And it has come out the question of, is she now allowed to bring them to conventions? And she's a wonderful, wonderful girl, very nice, and she does beautiful work. So that was pretty interesting.
I do a supernatural podcast, but it's a little different. Instead of like, oh, this is why we love Sam and Dean, and this is what what the episode about. We take the monster in the episode, the ghost, the goblin, the witch, whatever, and we talk about
Mm-hmm.
where does the real life, in reality, lore and religion and history of that creature come from.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we've done about 30 episodes, and the next episode coming up is going to finally be one I've been waiting for. It's our werewolf episode, because this is the first time we're covering into werewolves. And it is so off the rails, especially when my co-host, who is a kind of a B-movie scream queen actress, who
Mm-hmm.
does nude modeling as well, and she talks about the movie where she, watching my language, she screws a werewolf.
Okay.
And I'm just like, so
So
this is
is
like
it
your
is it Bow Chicka Wow Wow?
Oh no, this is like rated R. This is rated R,
That
not.
was a dog joke. You're
Wait.
missing all my jokes. I'm terrible today.
Oh,
Ugh.
I just got it. Okay, I got that. I got that. Okay, that's
Took you
funny.
long enough. My
That's
jokes are terrible, and I'm thinking about going into comedy. Not anymore.
no. Would you do it in cosplay?
Yeah, I did a few minutes in cosplay at a comedy show at a convention because a couple of the comedians didn't show up, and I was offered. I'm also hosting a comedy night as well because the host doesn't have to fill as much time. So because I'm still new, I got a few things to say. I got some laughs.
And then my other question is, what? You of course are a geek girl yourself. Is there anything that you are passionate about collecting, or what do you collect?
Souls. Unfortunately, they won't let me add them to my Amazon wish list.
But hey, if you gotta go, go with a smile. So I hope it's like, you get a kiss out of it when you suck the soul out of somebody.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a given. Like, I'm glad that you knew that.
Just put your
Now
hands
the world
around their
knows.
head, gently embrace them, lean in, and just start slowly sucking it out through your mouth from theirs.
Exactly.
It sounds
That's
like.
that's pretty much exactly how it is.
No, but seriously, what do you collect?
I don't know. I mean, I have a collection of Funko Pops because people keep mailing them to me, so that's very exciting. I have a lot of wigs, but as far as like the geek collection, I don't really have that. I always moved a lot as a child, so I never was comfortable with collecting anything, if that makes sense.
Were you an army?
So,
You were an army brat?
no, we just were poor and moved a lot.
Oh, I understand that.
It's a life choice called poverty.
No, hey, I listen. My parents were okay, and then my parents got divorced, and it wasn't okay. My dad got very very rich, and my mom unfortunately was very very poor. So
Oh, that's rough.
yeah, so and it she kind of married poor, and then my dad kind of married very very rich, remarried very very rich, and it kind of changed
Mm,
him into a person that I don't like anymore. So, but
right.
it
Yeah, I'm not a person that has things. I'm not. I love things, so I always appreciate it. It means more to me to receive something that someone else thinks I would enjoy than to just go out and buy something that I like. If that makes sense.
there's not any particular
I'm
comic book
very
that you read.
sentimental. Okay, I do have a pretty extensive Ren and Stimpy comic book collection.
Like the old Marvel ones.
Yep,
Is that
I
the
love the art. I love the stories. So yeah, I do have a Ren and Stimpy collection, and that's kind of my baby. I love horror comics. I have kind of been able to collect a few. I'm not really like into too many of the new ones, but I love the old Tales from the Crypt. I have a few of those. And if I come across something, I'll pick it up.
Do you know who, being a horror comic fan, do you know, you must, sorry, let me start over. Did you know who Gene Cullen was?
Name sounds familiar.
He was
I'm
the,
really bad with names.
he was the artist on Tomb of Dracula.
Okay.
He, he came on my show, did an interview, which was fantastic. It was so nice to have him on. I don't have the interview anymore. Two
Mm.
weeks later, he died.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It was maybe about 2 months later, maybe about 2 months later, but it was so awesome to have him on the show. And he talked about like, oh, I just did a new project for Marvel. I haven't done anything in them for years, and it's Captain America number 601. So this was like after the issue, the big 600 issue where they begin the return of Steve Rogers after he died and that whole stupid story. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna get into it. It's long and complicated,
I
but
know. But we're
it
not doing that.
involves
That's a
Cap.
whole other thing.
It's a World War II story involving Cap and Bucky versus vampires, which was perfect considering that he drew Tomb of Dracula. And
Okay, so it's Marvel's Elseworlds?
no, this was a flashback story. They just decided
Was
to
it?
give a filler issue while they were waiting for the return of Steve Rogers' storyline to begin. Um,
Okay, gotcha.
this was just before the Siege event where the Norman Osborn was running Shield. That whole story, if you're familiar with it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really great to kind of get the inside scoop about this story coming out that he probably wasn't allowed to talk about because the book didn't come out
Right.
for a few more months. But then he died, and it was unfortunate. But I had many years later, and he's still alive. Like last year, I had Marv Wolfman on the show. Marv Wolfman was the writer of Tomb of Dracula, and of course, he was the creator of Starfire, Cyborg, Beast Boy, Raven from the Teen Titans, as well as writer on so many things like The Crisis on Infinite Earths. But it was great to talk to him about Dracula, Tomb of Dracula, and he told me that he's never actually seen a Dracula movie before writing that.
Oh, wow.
And to this very day, he still has never watched a movie of Dracula. He's read the
Well,
book.
see, no one can say they've plagiarized anything.
That's why he doesn't ever want to see a movie of Dracula because he just he worked on a Dracula comic book for 70 issues and he doesn't want to.
Right. So, yeah, no, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it makes his work more organic rather than him trying to be competitive or worry about things. There's so much to worry about that it's not worth that anymore.
It's funny you mentioned the Tales from the Crypt because I was just at my local comic book store and they I don't know when it came out, but it was really new. A hardcover collection of the horror stories by Kirby and Simon has been published.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I gotta find that.
Yeah, it's like $50, but it's a pretty thick book. So
See, that's the kind of stuff I love.
there was a guy on eBay, not on eBay, what was it? Some Facebook comic book selling group I'm in. He was selling, and I missed it. Oh my god, I'm still so pissed about it. He was selling for like $75 each of the 6 volumes of The Vault of Fear, Tales from the Crypt. Not $75 a volume, but as like the set of the Tales from the Crypt 6 volume hardcovers.
And that's why I don't own very much of this stuff.
Oh, killed me. I
Because it
missed
is
it.
expensive, right? It's like you just hope that comic book stores are gonna put it in their dollar bins and not know what they're looking
Exactly, exactly. Well,
for.
we again, Cara, thank you so much for coming on the show. For anyone's listening, by the way, when this episode goes up on our YouTube channel, we are going to be promoting on our Radio Horror Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube a little giveaway that Kara's sending over to us. Books by Kara of her photos, I believe. I don't know which book it is. I don't have the book in hand, but we will have books of AZ Powergirl to give away here on Radio of Horror. All you have to do is like and comment on this video or on the preview video, as we are going to have a preview of the book when it comes in the mail on our Radio of Horror YouTube channel. So like and comment, and we will pick a winner and ship it off to you. What's the next convention you're going to be at, Kara?
Okay, so summer I've got Smallville Comic Con in Hutchinson, Kansas. I've got Duke City in Albuquerque and San Diego Comic Con, as well as my cosplay comedy night coming up in Mesa in July, and that's all I know for sure off the top of my head right now.
Fantastic. And people can find you on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. You also have a Twitch channel, I saw.
AZ Powergirl.
What games do you play on Twitch?
I don't. I do creative.
Ah,
I
okay.
don't have time to play games. I got stuff to do.
So is it like a workshop type of thing?
No, usually I just color or talk to people. I haven't been very active on it. I've got something coming up, so stay tuned.
Gotcha. And if anyone who's a really big horror fan wants to check out Kara's work, she's got great photos you can pick up of Kiss and Velma and a couple other horror
And my
icons as
Jason
well.
Voorhees.
You did what?
I did a Jason.
Yes, you did
The Friday
the
the 13th
Jason.
Jason.
Was that the
Yeah.
what is that called? It's a specific type of cosplay, right? It's like Japanese statues.
No, that actually came out. That actually came out when you're thinking of the statues. And what happened is the statues came out after I did mine. Mine was based off the art of Alfred Trujillo, and he was brought in on this project because a tattoo artist known as Big Chris Art. You ever seen that big poster at Walmart now and Spencer's? It says "Why so genius" and it's Einstein with the Joker makeup.
Yeah.
So that's my buddy Big Chris, and he hired Alfred Trujillo to draw these women for a tattoo that someone had commissioned him to do. And so that costume was actually based off of that line. A few years later is when the Japanese statue.
Ah, okay, gotcha. But you also do you do Daphne and Velma. Did you see the episode of Supernatural? They did the Scooby Natural.
I haven't. I need to look it up.
It's so good. It should still be on demand, but I think the whole if you have Netflix, I think the whole season's on Netflix now.
Oh, good. I'll look that up.
It's
Because I've been
so
hearing
good.
about it and I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
It's so good. Everybody is hoping that they do another one.
It makes sense. It just works together.
At the
But
same
anyway,
time, I don't want them to do another one because then it doesn't make that one episode feel like super special. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, they did that before,
right.
but it's great. Sam and Dean are complete, and Castiel are animated exactly like Scooby Doo, and they got like Frank Welker and
I've seen the art.
Matthew Lillard returns to voice the Shaggy once again.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting.
It-
But yeah, I did both Daphne and Velma, and I shot some of the stuff in the Mystery Machine.
Very, very, very cool. You ever
So,
thought about doing
but
a Sam and Dean cosplay?
no, because a lot of people don't get it.
Oh, what about Castiel?
Maybe. I have so much stuff right now, and it's always like throwing more stuff out there. So
Yeah,
right now, I'm
no, I
trying to
get
get
it.
through what I got.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
everything's always on my mind. So, but definitely let's get back together. And if you want to do a show like completely about like the legalities and the whole professional cosplayer aspect of it, then we can definitely do that. Or whatever, hit me up. You know how to find me.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the summer. So that way all your summer conventions are out of the way, and you maybe have some wind down in the fall.
Right, exactly. So, all right, cool. Well, it was really great talking to you, and thank you for having me on. And I will get this book out. Send me the address again because it's buried now, and I will get that book out to you, those books out to you today.